them down the path and you're diagnosed, is that something happens in this intestinal flora that sets you down that path. It's a research hypothesis generating area. We don't know where it's going to go, but it's intriguing enough, and there's enough research to tell us we should try to fund there and see if there's anything to it. Is there a particular change that occurs in the intestinal tract? What's causing it, and what is it that commits a person down the path of type 1 diabetes to become insulin dependent? So we're going to be funding in this area this year. This area will be led by Dr. Jessica Dunn. So I'm excited to see what's going to be here. I think this is complex, trying to tease out what is going on in the intestinal tract, but I think it's worth putting some money there. Okay, in the cure area, I talked about encapsulation. We've got a tremendously strong program going in the regeneration of beta cells, critically important. We put a lot of weight behind it in the last 2 years. We're going to see if any of that pays off this year. So we've been working on reprogramming as well, which is really taking other cells, or reprogramming is taking other cells from not beta cells and regenerating, but other cells, such as cells that coexist with beta cells that don't secrete insulin. We want to put some investment behind whether we can take other cells and make them secrete insulin. Challenging, I agree, but I think worth funding in. So that's another area that we have got a very nice research portfolio lined up to fund this year. Antigen-specific immunomodulators and biomarkers, I told you we'd fund there. So let's talk about encapsulation. This has got line of sight for us. We're going to drive this hard. We're going to put a lot of money there this year. There's no question about it. What is encapsulation? The concept is you need to take beta cells, and however we get them, what the source of that is yet to be determined, but we've got 3 strategies to hit this on goal. And you encapsulate these beta cells, and then you implant them. You can implant them, and it depends. Again, we've got many strategies. We're talking with different companies. So you get the beta cells, you encapsulate them in a protective coating. This coating will allow insulin to be secreted out, for the cells to be maintained healthily, but the immune system can't get in and attack the cells and kill them again. So we are really going to drive this technology, which means we got to work with device companies because they got to make us the encapsulated material. We've got to work with cell biologists because they've got to make us beta cells that we can put inside this capsule. And then we're going to work with clinicians and surgeons to figure out where are we going to implant this. Is it going to be under the skin? Is it going to be in the stomach? How long is it going to last? So challenging, I agree. Hard, I agree. But I think it's worth a shot on goal. So encapsulation is going to get really strong lens this year. We've been working hard on a weekly basis, getting a strategy in place, talking to companies that can help us. We need engineers, cell biologists, and strong physicians that will be guiding this program. But this has got line of sight for us. If this works, this is transformational. So you're going to see reports coming out in the encapsulation area. Now to the treat area. Artificial pancreas, as you know, that's been moving. We've been really forcing the agenda in that area. We've got some new initiatives this year on sensors. We're getting ready to launch a very large sensor initiative with a partner called the Helmsley Trust. This is an area where we think that the sensors are going to hold us up from a regulatory perspective. We've been living with the FDA about trying to get clinical guidance to be able to get and realize an artificial pancreas, and we know one of their points is sensors. So this year we're going to launch a sensor initiative. We're going to go see if we can improve the sensors so that when we're ready to do real outpatient clinical work, the sensor is not going to be our limiting step. So watch for the sensor initiative to launch. We're actually planning to launch it right before the big, what we call the ADA meeting, which is the American Diabetes Association meeting. So in 2 weeks, we should be announcing this new sensor initiative. Again, it's a joint partnership with the Helmsley Trust. They will co-fund with us. We're going to put in, and they're going to put in, we're going to do a 50-50 match and try to get companies to come and be willing to develop new and better sensors. Retinopathy is also a program that we're going to spend quite a bit on this year. There's real tremendous lack of screening and diagnostics in this area. We think it's important. We think it's our responsibility to help look at the regulatory environment of why screening and lack of access to having screening done is problematic for patients. And so that's going to be another one of our initiatives. Just to update you, we've been working very hard. You've probably read the news. We've done something that no nonprofit patient organization has ever done. According to the FDA in the history of regulation, I worked very hard with the APP team on this. Every time we met with the FDA, they kept stonewalling us, not giving us clear guidance of how to do clinical trial work. Anybody in the business of clinical trial work knows that if you don't have clinical guidance, which means a map of how to get through the clinic and get approval by the regulators of a new therapy or a new device, you're never going to get to the end. And of course, the artificial pancreas does not have clinical guidance. It doesn't exist. And so when I took over the artificial pancreas project back in 2009, we went to the FDA and we said, we need clinical guidance. You have to write the document. You have to tell us how to get to outpatient trials. And the answer was, we'll get to it. Well, it wasn't good enough. And so last year in the summer, we decided to put together a panel of 12 KOLs, key opinion leaders that absolutely know how to do clinical trial work. We brought them all together in Washington. We locked them in a room with us, and we said, we're going to write clinical guidance. And when we get done, we're going to give it to the FDA, and we're going to tell them how we think this needs to be done. And that's exactly what we did. We sat, and we spent 2 days together, and they all hated us when we got done, but we drove it, we got it on paper, we tweaked it over a couple months, we presented it to the FDA, and they didn't know what to think about it. And we actually, a couple of months ago, they called us down after we handed them the clinical guidance, and we got in the room, and typically when we're in the room with them, it's very intense. Usually it doesn't go well for us. And the leader of the artificial pancreas project for the FDA looked at us and said, he picked up the document and he threw it on the table and he said, I think, to my knowledge, no patient organization has ever written the FDA a clinical guidance. And we applaud you for doing that. And we think it's great, and we're going to take a lot of parts out of this. So JDRF should be extremely proud of the team that drove that, because believe me, we were right at them, forcing them to come to the table. They didn't have a choice. They had to take it. And I think what we wrote, as they said, I believe they will be modifying it. They've given us feedback. We'll be modifying it and changing it. But I think we've got a path, and that's really important. So, way to get things done. The artificial pancreas is moving. We do need better sensors. We know the regulators absolutely have been stoning us on that. So, launching this initiative will help us there. And in the meantime, we're going to move to outpatient studies. We've got a couple ready to go. We're going to be testing this technology. We've got to make sure it's safe. We've got to make sure patients can use it appropriately. It's very important, and then we've got to make sure it works. So that's where we are with that project right now. I want to talk to you about funding for next year. It's looking pretty good. This year we made $58 million new commitments. That means we funded $58 million for new stuff. We did reach $124 million in total commitments, which means research that we had already committed to. Next year, it looks like we will have $68 million. We're forecasting and building a pipeline out for $68 million in new research, which is great. So we're gaining 10, 12%, which I like to see, and probably total commitments anywhere between 128 to 130 million. So I'm excited about the funding for next year. We've built out a pipeline. We know where we're going to be funding pretty much. So now we just have to commit those funds. So I did want to tell you where we're going to land probably in FY12 for spending. We are rolling out a new governance. When I came in